All right, welcome everybody. This is a Key Ministry virtual roundtable, and apparently we have chosen a subject that a lot of people are interested in.
Oh, well, no, you got to eat on
So
this.
I can't remember the exact title of what we are talking about today, but basically we're talking about thinking through making our events at our churches disability friendly, like from the get-go. Okay. Did I kind of, I'm looking at Trace because I can see Trace. Did I kind of hit is that kind of what the title is? Okay, great. Thank you. I should have it in front of me before I start these things. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So, oh, thank you, Wally. Are your church events accessible for all? Church event planning with disability in mind. Thank you. Thank you, team. I appreciate you. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off. Would anybody like to start with either a question or a situation? Just something to get us started. And you know who I'm looking at, because Tom and Julie, I love to when you get us started. Are you feeling it today?
Yeah, we were just talking when we before we got on about large events such as 4th of July. We have a 4th of July event, and one time we had a tent, and so there's a lot that can be done there.
So we have a family in our parent support group, and what they've done with a county fair. They have asked them, and this has been in the works for a couple of years, but they asked them if they could have a silent dance party. And of course, nobody knew what that was. So that was the first item of, giving some education, right? And then through the years, though, they have grown this thing to like 3 tents. And it's not, it's not just the people that have disabilities that are stopping in there, or the ones that are not hidden, you know what I'm talking about. So there are so many people that have been so blessed by this tent, and they have fidgets in there. They have the silent dance party in there. And so we got to thinking, why can't we do that at our church? If we can do that at a county fair, why can't we do it at our church? So that's what we were talking about.
Okay, so I love this, and I want it. First of all, I love the Meegans, but secondly, I want to point out something that you said. So that particular station or event or whatever, that was planned with disability in mind. That was planned for folks who maybe have, sensory differences or whatever. And yet it was benefiting lots of people. And so that's one of the things I hope we can talk about today, how sometimes when you design something, with disability in mind, it's actually benefiting all people, the whole universal design idea. Thank you. I love that idea. I've actually never been to one of those like silent discos or whatever, whatever they're called, but it sounds like a cool thing. So, all right. Anybody else? Yes, Michelle.
So one of the things that we've got coming up is our Easter egg hunt. And in the past, it's been millions of eggs, and it's a free-for-all. Everybody just runs and gathers as many eggs as they can. And I see how that would be really difficult for children with anxiety disorders or any kind of, behavioral disorders, trauma responses, that kind of thing. So how do we include kids like that without overwhelming them, without just having 2 separate events and like drawing attention to the difference?
I love this question. All right, this is a great thing for us to discuss. So for those of you who do an Easter egg event or something similar, okay, any kind of event where it's a little bit of, chaos, how do you manage the environment in such a way that and we're talking kids for in this example, that kids who maybe have some hidden disabilities, so it's not necessarily like a physical, like there's a child in a wheelchair type of thing, but a kid who maybe has anxiety, like, how do you create an environment where they can participate and succeed? Any ideas? Yes, Cynthia.
We do an Easter egg hunt that is an inclusive event, and we have a separate area that is set up with hay bales to create a maze, and it's in a park. Well, it's in a basketball court, so it's like next to the parking lot, so it's wheelchair accessible. And the Easter eggs are hidden, quote unquote, up on the hay bales so that are easier to get to. The area is roped off with streamers, and we advertise it for those needing additional. I think I have the flyer. It says additional needs for accessing the eggs. So, and it is, we do have the ADA sign at that area, but all the other events that go with the Easter egg hunt is for everybody. There's a story corner with the Easter bunny, and there's face painting, and we give out free Bibles. So, and then we have the graphic Bible, the graphic adventure Bible for our special needs, and we have a dyslexic Bible as well that the parents can ask. We also don't put candy in the eggs for our special needs students. They collect the eggs and they turn in the tickets from the eggs for prizes. And that prize bag is given to the parent. So the parent can then allot the prizes and the candy to the student. So we also buddies. We use one-on-one buddies, and there's a buddy available to go through the egg hunt with the student. And we allow a couple students at a time, as opposed to the whole free-for-all that's happening. And that is happening at the soccer fields next to the basketball court. But this is just a more contained environment. So it's not a separate event, and they're not completely separated. There's just an environment if they need additional assistance.
So you're giving families options for different environments that maybe meet the needs of like different, maybe mobility, and even like, I mean, food allergies are a thing. And so you got to shout out for the ticket idea.
Yeah.
Ticket and eggs. The visual of like the maze, that kind of helps control the chaos a little bit, it sounds like. Thank you.
And it also works really well. We have several families that only one child has special needs and needs that level of assistance. So their other children are going on the free-for-all, and they're able to hand off their child with special needs to a trained volunteer that then helps them go through the maze. And then they can keep their eye on their kids out in the free-for-all field. We have in California, I'm in Florida now, but in California, we did a special needs specific event at a huge park. And by year 3, we had 300 participants.
Wow.
Because there are no special needs specific egg hunts. We had people coming from 3 counties.
Wow.
And it got huge. So that's part of what you got to watch for. If you do a specific special needs event, it will blow up huge, and you have to plan for that.
The word gets out. All right. So I'm going to read a few things from the chat. So Sarah shared 5 points. Fencing, have only one way in and one way out, makes it much better for children who love to run. I love that idea. I'm like, setting yourself up for success as far as safety goes, I think is really, really smart. I mean, for all kids, like for any children's ministry event. And I love that idea of kind of controlling the exits, if you will. color coding. If kids are looking for specific eggs, it makes it easier to slow down. So, and I think what you're saying there is like, let's say in the free for all, the chaotic thing, if you say like kindergartners, you're looking for blue eggs or whatever, that keeps, you know, a kid from just putting 40 eggs in the first 40 eggs they find in their basket. Separate areas, separate ages and abilities. Again, separating by like not having kindergartners and, you know, fourth graders battling it out in the arena. Redemption Center, no one gets food right away. They can all trade them for later. Also allows for a gospel message about our redemption. Ooh. All right, where's Sarah? Sarah, I'm giving you a shout out. That's very clever. Very nice. Consider groundwork. Can you be on a paved surface, at least for some groups? Yeah, so that again, like, you know, if there's a family with a stroller maybe, or wheelchair or whatever, wagon. So those are great ideas, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. And Katie's asking, how do you manage or train the volunteers in the event they're a buddy with a child that struggles with eloping or running? And this is, you know, this is an issue in all of children's ministry for sure. And obviously if you're kind of controlling the entrances and exits from the beginning, that's a great way to start. You know, at a lot of events that we have at our church, you know, whether it's respite or whatever, we do, because there are multiple ways in and out of the building and stairwells and all that, we do, you know, have door guards in place just to make sure that everybody's remaining safely in the area they're supposed to be and nobody's coming in that shouldn't. Does anybody else want to say anything about that?
We use a fenced area. Our basketball courts are fenced. And we use one entrance in and out. So the maze goes around so that there's no way for them to get out. So unless they're coming through where volunteers are at the main entrance, so they come in and out the same way. We do volunteer training for our volunteers quarterly for our special needs, and it's specific. There's a whole section on eloping, how chasing is the worst thing, and how you block. If we have a registration process for all of our students, but there is one specific to special needs. And if they call out that eloping is a problem, we assign 2 or more volunteers to that student so that there's always somebody there to block an exit. We also use weighted objects like a neck roll that's weighted. We've used ankle weights before, or a weighted blanket to just, because they really just need that security feeling. So that works really well as well.
That's like getting to know the particular students. So, you know, my boys are in their 20s now, but when I had 3 little boys, I'm telling you, knowing that there's only one exit is like, it's very helpful because it's hard to keep track of more than one child, even if they're not an eloper. All right, I am going to read a little bit more from the chat, and we're on 3 screens worth of people now. So again, like if you raise the little digital hand, that'll pop you up to the front of my screen and I can call on you. So let's see, does anyone do a community event that your ministry supports rather than leading the event? How do you help families or support needs when you are not leading the project and creating the plans? That's a really good question. And I am huge into community collaboration, like the church and the community collaborating together to serve families. And so this is a really great question. I can give you one small example, but I'll wait and see if anybody else wants to chime in first. Well, while you're trying to raise your hand, I will share my small example. So my church hosts a like a sensory friendly time with Santa at one of the towns in my area at their tree lighting ceremony. And so they provide the Santa. It's the same Santa that visits, that comes and does the whole tree lighting thing. But they give us a community room at the police station. That's just like at a community center kind of thing. And we provide the volunteers. We bring like just fidgets and sensory things to keep people occupied. And this just gives families a time, if they want to see Santa, a time when it's not part of the humongous, chaotic, cold, because that part's outside, community event. So this gives them just time, just their family. But my church provides the volunteers for it. And so my church kind of hosts it. And so that's an example of a community event that we just go and provide support. We also do the marketing for it. Anybody else want to share something like that?
So that's my question. If I can just elaborate a little bit,
Yeah.
we partner with the town to do their event. And so they drop eggs out of a helicopter. We provide the volunteers the eggs and the candy, and we run the event, the actual Easter egg hunt event part, but they do everything else. And it's a massive event. There's like over 3,500 people that show up to this. So we've never really done anything for special needs before. And our special needs ministry is fairly new. We just launched it in like August of last year. So I have like 9 people on a team that are buddying with kids right now. So it's a very small situation, but there are definitely kids and families I'd want to be able to cater to figure that out. So I was just trying to figure out, like, it's an outside event. So like, it isn't like we have a space like that we'd be able to do. I guess it would be more along the lines of a partnership with the community to express like how we would want to do something. But it's not something that we really have a lot of say in, because we're just there, you know what I mean, to help run the event.
So, and please, anybody chime in. But my first thought when you said that, first of all, that's really cool that your church does that. But so one thing you might want to do is check in with those, the families that are currently attending your church and say like, hey, are you attending this event? And is there anything we can do to support you? Like what do you need in order for your child to successfully attend this event? And then provide that. Another idea is, if this is a big outdoor event in the community, what if they would let you put up just one of those tents, the ones that they're not hard to set up, but you need at least people pinch your fingers, those tents. What if you set up one of those tents and, set up a little banner that advertises your church? Because we definitely do that when we go in the community. And, just provide, like maybe you provide those little water bottles from Costco or something like that. Like just something, maybe you have some fidgets there or some seating, some bean bags, I don't know, something just like, hey, we're here if you need a little bit of a break. And by the way, well, let us tell you about our ministry. Any other ideas for Rachel?
Rachel, I'm started a ministry in our church in Nebraska, and I reached out to the community too. The Autism Society in Nebraska had a yearly carnival that was a fundraiser for them. But as a church, we said, can we come alongside and help you? They were very grateful, and we did, but they also had a time that was separate for families that had special need children. I know it sounds like your event is quite large, but maybe you could go. Is there like an autism society or something else like that you can say, hey, here, and go in together, or maybe begin to lay the groundwork and saying, hey, is there a possibility that we could set a certain time at the very beginning that these families could just enjoy before everyone else comes? That might depend on the size of people that come. In our community, that worked well. They got like an hour and a half before the whole community could come and stuff. And then the full community came to the event. So that's what we did here.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Santa thing. Like it was the same event, but beforehand in a more controlled environment. Love that.
Hey, this is Doug Rothenbush from Florida. You mentioned autism organizations. If you're not tied into a local Down syndrome organization, I recommend that as well. They're all over the country. If you need help finding one in your area, let me know. I've worked with quite a few of them across the country.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. All right, Sarah has her hand up.
I'm just wondering, I know as far as utility, things that benefit children who have autism or things that benefit children who have Down syndrome can be extrapolated to children who don't have those particular issues. Would either society be interested in also providing assistance to people who have something different than that issue, but might also benefit people who have that specific issue? Like one of my family members has a very rare consideration as far as special needs. So there isn't actually a society for that family member, but that doesn't mean that things that help children with more common ones wouldn't also help them.
Right. Yeah, good question. And again, like this makes me think about the whole concept of universal design and like what are some things that we can be doing in the, again, if we're talking children's ministry, in that setting that actually just are good practices and benefit all kids. I want to switch gears for 1 second, and then we're going to go back to the chat. We have just had a lot of great discussion on collaborating in the community with community events. So we talked about, providing support from your church at community events or, partnering, partnering at events that are already happening in the community. What about in your church itself as you're planning church-wide events? So not necessarily events that are strictly like, quote, special needs ministry or specifically for your, like whatever disability ministry population. But as you're planning church-wide events, what are some things we can think about? What are some ways we can, again, what are some decisions we can make that will probably benefit a lot of people, including those with some common disabilities? That was a really wordy way of asking that question, but hopefully you guys got it. Yes, Sarah.
I have typed this in the chat so you can
Okay.
skip it later when you get back to the chat. But one thing that's very important for my family is temperature. So we have one family member who can get frostbite when it's like 15 degrees Celsius outside. I'm sorry for those of you who live in Florida. I am not as good with Fahrenheit. But like you can get frostbite when you don't expect any child will. And we have other people who can get heat stroke when you would think it's fine outside. So offering some sort of climate control for the weather is very important for my family to be able to engage in anything. And that is something a church could easily assist with by just, having an indoor room that people can use as either a warming or cooling center.
Right. I love that. So that's a small consideration. It does not cost extra money or anything like that. But just thinking through that and offering that, that's a great idea. Along those lines, so my church had a tree lighting ceremony. It was outside. I live in Cleveland. It's cold. But this is awesome. So one of my fellow staff members said, what if we set up a sensory room inside the church in case there's anybody who just needs a break? And I almost cried because I was so happy that it wasn't just, my job as a director of disability engagement to come up with these ideas, but like, I was so like proud of my fellow staff members for thinking of that and including that as just part of the event. And it was used by a lot of families, and not just those that, you know, you would consider like part of the quote special needs ministry. What other, like for big churchwide events? When you're planning events, for me personally, one of the toughest things to figure out is food. And so I don't like, do any of you have that issue? Like trying to meet all the needs of the different, but that's one sometimes, you know, depending on what kind of event, sometimes you can make some food decisions that will accommodate a lot more people than other food decisions. Sarah.
So my family also has a lot of allergies represented in it. And for us, the two things that make it most accessible are have your ingredients lists ready and easily accessible so that, you know, if you're doing hot dogs and hamburgers, I know right away, does that hot dog contain nitrates, for example? The other thing is offering each element separately. I know from a handout perspective, it is so much easier. Again, if you're offering hot dogs and hamburgers, to already have all the meat in the buns wrapped up and, you know, the individual condiments so that people can move along the line. But as I have a gluten allergy, once it has touched the bun, I can't eat it. I cannot just take the bun out. It is like an anaphylactic allergy, so that makes it unsafe for me. So
Yeah.
just those two things make it so much easier. The third thing is let people know ahead of time what you can offer. So if I know that you're gonna have, you know, chips, pop, and hamburgers, I may not be able to eat the hamburger, but I know that I can have the chips and the pop and then eat something else later.
Right. So a little bit of communication ahead of time can make a huge difference. Love that. Thank you. I'm going to go back to the chat for a second because it is blowing up. So first of all, I'm just going back to the beginning. Will we be discussing the disability in the church conference? Well, not specifically, but we'll go ahead and take a timeout for an ad here. So yes, Key Ministry is hosting Disability in the Church. It's April 29th through May 1st. Registration is open now. It's disabilityinthechurch.com. And I see several of our speakers are on this call today, and I really want you all to be there. It's incredible to continue these conversations in person. So, all right. Let's see, go down here. Let's see. Okay. What about intentionally doing smaller, less stimulating ministries? How do folks balance intentionally reducing overwhelm in regular activities such as Awana Club or weekly services? Does anybody want to speak into that? I'm going to put that one on hold for a second. We're going to continue because there's a lot still in the chat.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear it all.
Yeah. So it's what about intentionally doing smaller, less stimulating ministries? How do folks balance intentionally reducing overwhelm in regular activities such as Awana Club or weekly services? Yes, Julie. I was hoping when I read Awana, I was hoping you would raise your hand.
Yeah, so at our church, we have a big church, and what we've done with Awana is that the children that can go into and be inclusive from our disability ministry, we let that happen. But the ones that need a little extra support, a lot of extra support, they have actually let them go in for certain things that they can be part of the larger group, and then they pull them out and bring them to our sensory room and do whatever is and with the volunteers, whatever is needed to get the Bible verses talked about. It's a different ball game, you know, as it is, as we all know, but that is then focused on in a way that those children can grab it better. So that's what we've ended up doing. So there is inclusive, but then there's also, let's see if we can't make sure, because the whole bottom line is we want them to get the gospel message, right? We want them to get the fact that God's word is so precious and we want to memorize it and all that good stuff. So if that's our goal, then how are we going to do that with each individual child? And you can't, you know, you have limited volunteers and you have a lot of kids, so you have to really tailor that as best you can. But that's an opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, and that, Julie, what you're saying is, I mean, this is so important to me. So, like, my personal feeling is, you know, whether or not a child has a disability does not, or you know, a specific diagnosis does not determine which environment they're going to be in, right? Like, we want kids to be where they can best learn about Jesus. And, you know, we want the most inclusive, least restrictive setting. But if a child needs some time in a sensory room or all time, like, if that's the environment where they're going to learn about Jesus, like, we want to be able to create that. So I love that you're doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Beth,
Yes.
this is Sherry Work. My camera is not working right now. So I think it's important to also go back one more step, and that is training our teachers and leaders and volunteers on how to make any lesson reach more children. And unfortunately, over the years, we've kind of, you all sit and let us talk to you kind of at church, and we know that more than 80% of people do not have auditory learning styles. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is go back kind of to the beginning and say, let's look at our lessons, let's look at how we're running our programs to begin with. And it is there, they need to be changing every 5 minutes to 10 minutes. There needs to be all types of modalities when it comes to learning. And then when we do those things, the goal is that most of the situations will be managed in a very inclusive way, and then we have the rest of it to do extra with. In the Reach Hurting Children book, he talks about you know, I think it's 80% of our issues can be dealt with a very like universal design, like you're talking about. And so I do think it's important to come back, and this also has helped us when we have students who are not, whose parents have not said, this child has a disability. Maybe they don't know, maybe they don't want to share, but there's no designation. And all of us have those kiddos in our programs that we know need extra support. But if it is just made into how we're planning our lessons, then we're more likely to be able to meet their needs, even if they haven't been named yet.
Amen, sister. And you got some confetti on that one. Yes, that is very well said, Sherry. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to continue going down the chat. Amy suggested using wagons also helps kids with transition difficulties who may struggle with transitioning from one area to the other. I've heard it framed as a tool and not a toy, so that it's not a free-for-all, but reserved for those who may benefit from it more. Yes, that's an excellent idea. You know, particularly if you're talking about some of these outdoor events, or, you know, if you truly have to transition from one part of the building to the other. I love that idea. How do you appeal to and minister to families with adults who themselves cannot manage big groups, sensory overwhelm, or social anxiety? This is a really, really good question. You know, we're talking about the whole family, and the parent may have social anxiety, or, you know, whatever the situation is. So I'm sharing in the chat, for me, anxious adult, it helps to have lots of open space. If I know I will spend 3 hours not having enough space to maneuver, makes it far harder for me to engage in anything else. That is totally true. If your brain is just constantly thinking about, okay, how can I, exit, how can, you can't really participate. So thank you for that perspective. Schedule ahead of time, online previews and registration options, and providing quiet areas and times. That's excellent. A little bit of work ahead of time, whether it's communication or providing a preview, like a video or whatever, can really benefit a lot of people. Thank you, Tori, for sharing that. How about providing a sensory tent for participants? Lights, comfy chairs, puzzles, harp player, coloring sheets, water fountain, place for parents to sit, volunteers to work with children while parents have a coffee and visit. Again, yes, providing that kind of a sensory room or break area, if at a big outdoor event, could be a tent, just to give folks a chance to get away from the chaos for a little bit. I really like that idea. One thing to consider, many of our families with additional needs, climate controls. Oh, is that the one, Sarah? I don't need to read because you already said. Okay, thank you. Okay, and Wally shared training of the whole church, congregations and leadership on disability etiquette to level the knowledge, break down barriers, and then eliminate fears and myths of disability. Such an excellent point. And Wally, who's from Johnny and Friends, has shared a link in here, which we will share in when we post this recording. So I do encourage you all to check that out. Johnny and Friends has some wonderful resources. So this is a disability etiquette resource that can be shared with your church leadership and staff. So thank you, Wally, for that resource. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. So Leia's family attends a monthly sensory night at a children's museum, and some of what they do at that event could be helpful at your community event. So this is good. I like this. They provide visual schedules for the night. Oh, okay. I love visual schedules. All right. So don't even get me started. That's a whole nother roundtable, but I love visual schedules. Picture boards to utilize for choices of their different stations, fidgets, weighted items, etc., at different tables, and people can choose from those items to take around in the evening. They also have a place to go to if a child is overwhelmed or does need that sensory break. I love this. So everybody copy that idea, please. Jennifer asks, how do you market to families? You have an inclusive egg hunt if you don't have members in your church with identified disabilities. This small coastal town is attempting to start a disability ministry. All right, so let's talk about marketing ideas for any outreach ideas. Again, another one of my favorite topics. I'll keep reading from the chat. So Sarah suggested your website. It's actually highly unlikely no one in your church has an identified disability. You may just not know. And that's true. Like statistically speaking, there are folks in your congregation with, hidden disabilities or whatever. If they're not, there should be. So yes. So do make sure you advertise it within your congregation, even if, you don't know for a fact that you have folks that are, that have disabilities, but definitely on your website. So if a family is looking for something, let's say they have a child, who has additional needs, there's a pretty good chance they're going to visit your website and check you out before they ever step foot through your front door. And so make sure that your website, reflects that you're a welcoming church, and that you have an event like this or whatever it is that you do. Make sure that's on your website. Wherever, Sarah said, wherever you're advertising for the event itself, be clear what the offer is. Families love to have extra info. Yeah. I think, excuse me, anyone, especially if your family has some needs that need to be considered, or if you yourself have social anxiety, being able to know ahead of time is really, really helpful. And Tori shared a resource from Disability Belongs. She says it's really well-rounded and helpful. And folks, if Tori makes a recommendation, please act on it. Okay, Tori. All right. So she's shared the link in here, and we will post that with the recording as well. Okay. 19 new messages. Buckle up, everybody. All right. Lara shared the link to disabilityinthechurch.com. Woot woot. Of course, we'll post that. Vicki says, I always wonder if our churches aren't demographically representing the special needs population of the greater community. Why is that? What are the barriers? And from there, how do we plan to address these barriers? What barriers have other churches become aware of? How did you become aware of them? Great question. I mean, I feel like that's like what we're all doing, why we're having these discussions. So if people in your community aren't included in your church for one reason or another, how can we help? A common question, and you'll find out. So back to the marketing to the community. Let's share a few ideas for how to do that. I will tell you, we found that if you can put something on social media, especially if there's like a parent group that you're aware of, people will share. In the disability, like in the parenting disability community, if there's a resource that's out there, word travels quickly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that's one way to market, what you have going on. Yes, Julie.
So we spoke at a church about an hour away or 3 hours away from us on Saturday. And the way that they're a small church, but they're growing. And the way that they invited the community into their church to let them know that they have a disability focus is that they had a story time. And the reason for that is because the pastor's son, the pastor and his wife, and their son has autism, and that's what he liked. So they just took somebody from their congregation, happened to be their son, right? But they took somebody from their congregation and did something that they know already somebody with autism likes, right? So then they decided to invite the community in just for story time. And it's for an hour on a Saturday. I think they do it like every other month. And then, so this past Saturday, what they did was they did that story time, and then they invited people to come to the talk that we were giving. So it was a really cool kind of way in, and who knows with how that will grow. It will grow and how it will grow. So that's one avenue.
Love that. I love that. Anybody else have something they want to share along those lines? Marketing.
Beth, this is Sherry again in the dark. So I think it may be marketing, maybe word of mouth, and also may have to do with identifying new people. But one of the things we started doing 2 years ago is when we have an event, particularly like Vacation Bible School, we set up our registration, and then I send out a very brief kind of Google form questionnaire to every child's family that asks what I call generic questions, but the questions are, is there an area at school that your child needs extra support in? And we ask if they need, are they going to have maybe some separation anxiety when you drop them off? And we include things that I know are specific to all children in the mix of things that might be specific to a child with disabilities. And so what has happened as a result of that is that people are more likely to say that they have some disabilities going on, because we're acknowledging that every child has some strengths and some challenges. And then also they tell other people, they really wanted to get to know my child, and they asked this and they asked that, and then I print a report, and each teacher gets that information on all of those children, and probably at least half of them don't have disabilities, but by asking all of the families about their children's likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, there becomes an attitude of, oh, I think we will be welcome there.
Yeah, I love that. And again, like, we don't care about the diagnosis, right? So what you're asking is perfect. I love that, Sherry. Thank you. I'm going to call on Sarah and then Tori, and then I'm going to go back to the chat because we have 21 new messages. All right, Sarah.
You're gonna have to forgive the background noise. From a marketing perspective, I know somebody mentioned church websites earlier. Make sure it is
No, we have bread
very big
out
on your
already.
website and very easily to see. And don't call it anything, you know, cutesy and well thought out. Call it accessibility info. Make it big and bold, and then people can click on that and find out all the information you have. And then, you know, if you want to name your children's ministry like Wonderfully Made or whatever, have that under the heading that already tells them this is about accessibility, rather than making them look for the information.
Excellent. Thank you. Tori. Oh, she's muted. I promise whatever she says will be worth it. She can't unmute.
Hold on.
All right, well, she's working on that. I'm going to read one thing from the chat. So Brad shares a church that he's partnered with has handicap parking spaces, many of which are just regular spaces with a blue-white handicap designation. I have highlighted the need to make our parking legitimately handicap accessible, and we are taking steps to correct this oversight that flows out of an era that truly did not consider this as important. I highlight this as parking is the first impression we make for families who truly have accessibility issues. If they are challenged getting out of the car, we have failed before they get into the building. And Sarah shared it's in such an important part. In addition to most spaces not being wide enough, it's also rare that the space is long enough. I want to share that we have created some additional parking spaces at our church that aren't the, you know, like the blue and white symbol accessible parking, specifically for families who may not have the parking placard, but because of things like elopement issues and that type of thing, being closer to the building really benefits them. And so we've reserved some spaces for them. All right. Let's
Can you hear me now, Beth?
I can, yes, go for it.
Yay. Sorry, different computers, so like audio settings weren't working well. I applaud your church for doing that, by the way. That is deeply meaningful to families. And Sarah, I totally echo what you're saying about make your website and any information you have absolutely clear. And if you're gonna name anything special, then absolutely right, have it under where you already have it very clearly labeled. I just was gonna recommend churches just become a place where people with disabilities are known to find resources. So we're working with a church in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area to host the Disability Resource Symposium. So literally using the church building as a place to hold this event that draws in the public school district, local organizations serving children at school age, things available, group homes, right? Like all of the things that we can get connected through our collaborative efforts. And so there's that word again, right? Collaborate with your community agencies and organizations, but be the place where that is held. And then you're going to be asking questions. You're going to have families coming into your building. You're going to have a chance to bless them. You're going to have a chance to say, how can we do better? And I just think inviting people in is a huge, huge, huge element to this that churches can do. Yesterday, I was on a webinar put on by the Baylor Collaborative on Faith and Disability. And essentially, these are experts serving multiple congregations, all asking the question, how can churches help people flourish as people with disabilities in faith community? And so I'm literally asking those friends to list the things that churches can do. And they've already responded, have churches partner with local group homes that are in the neighborhood. That's something that I'm working on. Hold a disability resource symposium or expo, or like a Nathaniel's Hope Make 'em Smile event. Hold Bible studies and small groups that are equipped to offer a range of access points, like with Ministries Together curriculum is designed to do. Hold disability awareness Sundays. And in fact, let me just put this little thing out there. The Faith Inclusion Network, I was on a panel with them last week. And on that, Rabbi Levy was a part of that from the Jewish faith tradition. And he said, what if our congregations were the ones to spur a movement to create a disability day on the national calendar? Like we have Juneteenth on the calendar. What if our faith communities were who pushed for an initiative like that to create a nationally known holiday? So I think we could be places known for that, and that would raise some eyebrows and draw some attention to your church if you were a part of that movement, right? You can conduct supply drives. Look at Bridge Ministries in Bellevue, Washington.
Hey, what's up?
Wheels for the World from Johnny and Friends. Mobility. They're distributing equipment to people with disabilities who need it, and churches are a great place to
Go ahead and fix your lunch and I'll
facilitate organizing and collecting those things. Respite from Buddy Break by Nathaniel's Hope, or SOAR, or the Lucas Project, or just your own church putting it on. Day camps, caregiver support groups, story time, I think is a great idea. So I'm stealing that and adding that to the list. So these are just a few that I'm trying to compile, because churches need to know, what can we do to just say, people, we want you here.
Thank you. Those are some great ideas. Yeah, if you're not already hosting things in your building, do consider doing that. It's a great way for people to get in the door, you know, maybe for something else, and then see that you are a welcoming place. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you. Let's see. So back to the parking spaces. Let's see. To reserve parking spaces for people without an official placard, for example, elopement issues, what does your signage say and look like? So Abigail shared, ours says reserved for those with limited mobility, and every few months we communicate that includes families of children who struggle with transition or elopement. And I can tell you that the wording at our church, so at my church, we do call it the special needs ministry. And so, you know, we can talk about that term, but I will tell you that there are families who are at our church because it says special needs ministry. Okay, so these are the families that we are looking to serve. And so we have our little logo, and it says reserved for families in the special needs ministry. So Sherry, can you mute yourself? I can't, for some reason, I'm not able to mute your thing. Thank you. All right, let's see. So many things, but it's 12:55. My colleague Lara is on here. Lara, are you able to launch? She's going to launch a poll. Yes. All right. So we have over 50 people on here today, and we want you to very quickly let us know how you heard about today's roundtable. So, and your choices are key ministry email, social media, someone told me, or other. So if you're able, go ahead and just answer one of those questions, and we will keep moving on. So thank you for doing that. Okay, let me go back to the chat here. We are going to wrap this up at the top of the hour. So I'm going to zoom through the chat. And Tori has shared in the chat. What have you shared? Tori has a list so she shared a list of, that's great. Thank you. Okay, people are answering the signage thing, reserved for special needs families. Okay, Tori shared the link. I do want to say that so much of what we talked about today, so much, is actually going to be covered at the Disability in the Church conference. So I'm not trying to make another ad, but so many of the questions that were brought up and some of these, the folks from Baylor are going to be there that Tori just mentioned, it's all happening at Disability in the Church. And so I really, really hope that you all can plan to be there. Let's see. So Doug shared that they've partnered with a local disabilities resource conference, and we'll have a breakout session for churches wanting to learn more about this. Yeah, conferences are really a great way to get the information and really be ready to take action. All right, I'm really quickly going through. All right. Oh, vision casting. Yes. So it was asked how Tom and Julie got their ministry to grow in such a large church. Sherry's shared that their ministry has grown organically by meeting the needs of people God has brought to their church one at a time. So that's really powerful. Okay, wow. All right. Well, everyone, I think we could be here for hours, but we have reached the end of our time. So I just want to thank you all for what you shared. Again, we will put this recording on, on the Key Ministry Vimeo and YouTube channels with the links. We do these the third Wednesday of every single month. So I invite you to be back here on the third Wednesday of next month. Also, in case you don't know, we have an idea share. So same setup on the first Monday of each month at noon Eastern time. You are all invited to come back for that. We don't choose a topic ahead of time. So it's literally a chance to, ask questions, to brainstorm, to get encouragement, to give encouragement. And so if you go to keyministry.org, you can sign up for that as well. Thank you all. Just blessings on your day, on your ministries, and we will see you next time. Thank you.